This episode is brought to you in part by Exoterra. If you're as passionate about reptiles and amphibians as I am, you know that quality matters. I use Exoterra products on all my reptile and amphibian enclosures, which is why I'm excited to be partnering with them. From naturalistic decor to innovative lighting and enclosures of all sizes, Exoterra has everything you need for your cold-blooded companions. Exoterra. Make your reptiles feel at home. This episode contains a paid sponsorship placement for True Chroma by Faunalux. Lighting reptiles isn't just about brightness or giving UVB, it's about illuminating the world that animals actually thrive in. Introducing True Chroma by Faunalux, a premium, revolutionary LED spotlight purpose-built for animals. Faunalux has worked with lighting experts and biologists to develop something totally new. Reptile Vision Technology, a bespoke single-source chip delivering high levels of visible light and proportional UVA1. That means your animals can get true full-color vision for the first time. Tried and tested by zoos, vets, and passionate keepers worldwide, True Chroma is now available at fauna-lux.com/expertidiot10 for 10% off your order today. True Chroma from Faunalux. Educated by nature. This episode is brought to you in part by Unlimited Exotic Pets. Every day is Veranda Day for Nick Lillis, and it shows. At Unlimited Exotic Pets, Nick produces high-quality monitor lizards with a deep commitment to ethical care practices and top-tier nutrition. These aren't just pets. They're responsibly bred, ethically raised animals. Whether you're looking for a new companion, starting a breeding project, or anything in between, Nick has you covered. Unlimited Exotic Pets, keeping and breeding quality without limitations. Love reptiles? Don't miss this. If you're passionate about reptiles, amphibians, and everything cold-blooded, Reptiles magazine is a must-have. Each issue is packed with expert care tips, stunning photography, and the latest news in the reptile world. Whether you're a seasoned herpetologist or just starting your reptile journey, this magazine has something for you. Subscribe today and stay informed on the best ways to care for your scaly friends. For only $14.99 a year, you can step outside your algorithm and get exposure to things that you wouldn't normally see or learn about. My family reads Reptiles magazine, and you should too. Visit subscribe.reptilesmagazine.com to get started. This is the Expert and the Idiot podcast. If you like the show and you'd like to support us, there's a link to our Patreon in the description below. Some benefits include getting access to new episodes up to a month in advance. There's also links to USARK and USARK Florida. If you're not already a member, please sign up. Enjoy the show. Welcome to episode 72 of The Expert and the Idiot. Today I'm talking with Ross McGibbon, who's joining us all the way from, you're in Perth, right?
Yeah, Perth. Yep.
Perth, Australia, other side of the world. He's a wildlife photographer. Your love for reptiles has taken you to more than 35 countries, or is that higher now?
I've been to over 35 countries. I wouldn't say I've been herping in 35 countries. That'll be a dream one day, but I've definitely been to about 37 or 38 at the moment.
Right on. And what got you obsessed with reptiles and snakes and lizards? And I mean, what got it started? What got you into them in the photography?
I think it was a bit intrinsic. Like I don't know where I got it from, because I've got two sisters and my mum and in my immediate family, and neither of any of them are into reptiles. But whenever we would go, Mum would take us to these waterfalls and like up into like the hinterland of the Gold Coast, where we sort of spent the first sort of half of my childhood. And these massive big lace monitors always hanging around the campsite, and I was just obsessed with them. So I'd go get as close to them as possible and get whipped across the legs by their tails, and that was sort of my earliest, I think, memory of reptiles. But I think it even went back to when I was a kid. I was just obsessed with dinosaurs. But I think once I started to, get out and see the natural world, and realize there's all these miniature versions of dinosaurs walking around in the bush, then that sort of got me hooked, and just progressed from there. I went on to become a professional snake catcher around my work as a firefighter, and met a heap of wildlife photographers that were into herp photography through that, and that's what sort of led me down that path. But as a young adult, I sort of would watch all the documentaries on TV, and I would just be so jealous at all these wildlife photographers, out in the middle of nowhere. When you see behind the scenes footage, they're all out there on adventures, taking photos of wildlife. So I think I wanted to be that. And then I sort of, reality sunk in as I got older, and I chose a different career path. But I still had that burning passion to sort of get out there and have my own adventures. So herp photography for me has just been that outlet.
What, is being a snake catcher, is that like a common profession in Australia?
It's getting more common, especially with the introduction of social media, because people can basically just, watch all the snake catching videos. And it started out putting out a lot of educational content, and it had a double edged, where it would educate the public, but then it would also, let the world know what a snake catcher is, and that it's an actual profession. So then we started getting lots and lots of young kids sort of getting into it as well, which is a good thing, because, the more access to snake catchers people have, it's good. So I did that, quite extensively for about a year and a half before moving to Perth. And that was on the Sunshine Coast in Queensland, which is in southeast Queensland. And it's like a very, very highly densely populated area for all kinds of species. I think we have over 20 species of snakes there. And obviously with urbanisation, the more we spread, the more we sort of encroach into their territory, and then you get the crossover. And we would go to like 10 jobs a day sometimes. And these are all snakes in people's houses, schools, all kinds of random places they would show up.
And how do snake catchers make their money? Are they being reimbursed by the state, or is it just the property owner is paying for the service of the animal to be removed?
Yeah, generally speaking, it works differently in different states, but generally speaking, the property owner pays a call-out fee. So generally, it's a call-out fee. You're not guaranteed to catch a snake, especially if they've seen it and called you and then taken eyes off it, and they're like, "Oh, it was in the backyard 20 minutes ago or half an hour ago," and then you're obviously searching for nothing. So you're paying a call-out fee, and that's usually around these days it's sort of jumped up to the $130 mark Australian. But
wow.
When I did it, we just charged about $95, and you're hard pressed to get any professional out to your property for less than $100 or $200 these days. So,
jeez,
yeah,
that's some serious money. I mean, if you're doing like 10 calls in a day,
yeah. I mean, a lot of that went straight to the business as well. I say a lot of that, maybe 20% of that went to the business, but it was good extra pocket money. But I just loved it, man. It was similar to firefighting, where, you get a call, you've got to sort of get there quite quickly. It's public safety, and, sometimes the adrenaline's going, especially when it's a venomous snake. So it was a really interesting side hustle for me, but it ticked a lot of boxes. So I did that for a while, but I did get a bit fed up with the territoriality of a lot of the snake catchers and the infighting and the politics, and it just sort of turned me off the industry as a whole. So when I came over to Western Australia, I just signed up as a volunteer, so there was no money involved. I just go out and do it. People could give you a donation if they wanted to, but it sort of took the hustle out of it when people are trying to make a business out of it.
Yeah. I can imagine. And what are there two different kind of snake catchers? Are there kill and non-kill snake catchers, or is it mostly just kill the animal
That's
on site?
that's that's such an interesting thing, and it's so interesting that you put it that way. Like we don't have that at all in Australia. Usually, it's the property owner that's trying to kill the snake, and we're trying to advise against it. So in Australia, there's no such thing as kill. I guess a kill team to come over and kill a snake. That's just not even tolerated in Australia. Like everything's protected.
Oh wow.
And the only way you can kill a snake is if it's immediately threatening you and your family. So if it's attacking you, you can defend yourself. And if the snake dies in that process, fair enough. But if you just see a snake in your backyard, run and grab a shovel and go and kill it, that's illegal.
Wow. That's interesting.
Which is how it should be, man. Like, they're native wildlife, and they deserve to be there. So, if they're on your property, they have no idea what a boundary fence is or what a lease is. So, they're just trying to survive. So I think it's really immoral to go and kill a snake just for being there.
Yeah, that's wild. That's such a different culture compared to here in America, where the only good snake is a dead snake, and the majority of people, if they see something, they're gonna kill first and ask questions later.
Yeah, that's it. And they say that the snakes are the dangerous species. Hey.
Yeah. That is the joke. We're the invasive ones.
Yeah, exactly. But that's a part of that was a huge part of my I guess scope as a snake catcher, to try and educate the public, and that's what I actually enjoyed just as much as going and catching the snakes. So we used to do a lot of videos just to try and take all the hype out of it, and all the misconceptions out of snakes and snake behavior and how dangerous they are. And there's a lot of snake catchers doing a lot of good work in Australia in that space. I just sort of moved away from it and went more down the wildlife photography space, and continue to sort of educate people, but just in a bit of a different format than the snake catching videos.
So some of the images and videos that I've seen on your social medias and everything, it looks wildly dangerous. I mean, are you in control in these situations, or it is crazy how close you are to these animals, like with a camera, and it makes my hair stand up.
It makes most people's hair stand up when they're watching it, but I guess it's all context, like when people see some behind the scenes footage of me interacting with a snake during a photography shoot, they're like, oh, whoa, he's way too close, and there's a lot of judgment involved in that. But I try and, implore people to understand maybe my background and what actually led me to be able to do photography that close to venomous snakes. And I think it just comes from a lot of experience with them, being able to read every step of their behavior. So if they're recoiling to strike, if they're, even if their focus changes, to me, instead of, I'll use a welding glove in my left hand usually. And usually that's like a safety net for me. If it gets too close, I can either fend off or restrain the snake if I have to with a welding glove. In Australia, it's not like you guys where you have, fangs on vipers that are easily going to pierce something like that. Like a lot of our venomous snakes or elapids that have short fangs, and I sort of know the size of the snake I can get away with by wearing that glove, and that sort of helps me out when I'm really close. Other times, I don't need it, but it just all comes down to experience. And a lot of people will use that word, like I've been called crazy more times than I can think of, but there's nothing crazy about it. I mean, it looks crazy to the general public, but when you're an experienced venomous snake handler and you know what you're doing, then you can work within a margin of safety that you're comfortable with. And I guess I pushed that a little bit, but so far I haven't been bitten yet by a highly venomous snake during a photography shoot.
Oh, that's great. But you have been bitten before?
I definitely have. Yeah, it was literally just a rushed catch to try and get a small mulga snake or king brown off the road. I got it off the road and then it came back onto the road instead of continuing to slither in the other direction, and a truck was coming. So I hurried back onto the road. I rushed the catch and it spun around and sort of bit me on the finger, but it was only about 35 centimeters long, 40 centimeters long. So when they're that size and because it was such a hot night, it was so reactive and so hot. When they're that size, they've got a lot less far to travel when they turn around and decide to try and bite you. But yeah, that was a bit of an ordeal, that story.
So what happened? Did you have to, where was the bite? Was on your hand or your finger? And then did you have to use a compression bandage?
Yeah, I did. It was one fang into the little finger of my right hand. And I basically after I'd been bitten, I knew that I had been envenomed because the mulga snakes have painful venom. So I sat there for about maybe 20 seconds until I felt the pain, because I was hoping it was just a quick defensive dry bite, because that's pretty much all it was. It didn't hang on. It didn't chew. It was nothing like that. It was more of a glancing spin around. It got one fang in, and then I was like, okay, am I envenomed? If I am, I'll go to the hospital. And yeah, once I started feeling the pain from the venom, I was like, okay, bandage straight on, and straight into hospital, and ended up couple hours in hospital, and then getting airlifted back to Perth, because I was 1,000 kilometres from Perth, and the medical centres in all the small regional towns didn't have the anti-venom that I required. So had to get airlifted back to Perth. But it was kind of a silver lining to that, because I basically saw firsthand how good the Royal Flying Doctors are, and then I went on a campaign to raise money for them, and I put out an annual calendar, and in total about 5 years I raised about $12,000-$13,000 for them. So felt like it might go a way to paying back the medical costs of actually flying me in a private jet back to hospital.
Wow.
But yeah, lots of lessons learned on that trip.
Man, that's incredible. And so do you continue to do that calendar every year since then?
I've actually stopped doing it due to a number of things. Everything started to sort of work against me. Like, I had a year basically off social media, and my reach plummeted. It's sort of one of those things. They like to keep you addicted and hooked, and if you have a break from it, then you can have a successful page basically then just almost revert back to zero. So I hardly get any of the reach that I used to get because of that year off. And advertising on Facebook became extremely expensive, and then I couldn't market the calendar. So the last time I did it, I couldn't donate any of the money, because all of it got chewed up in advertising costs, and I decided to use a drop shipper. So that I didn't have to physically post out, 600 calendars in a year, because it would take up a good 6 months of my year. And it was just like everything revolved around getting these calendars out. So the work outweighed the actual benefit. And then when I actually broke even the last year I did it, I was like, I can't keep doing this because I'm not making any money for the Royal Flying Doctors. So I actually just canned it. So it's on hiatus for now. If I can eventually figure out a way to bring it back that it's going to be successful, I might. But yeah, it did the job. I did it for 5-6 years, and then raised enough money, so I felt like I've definitely paid them back for the journey.
Man, yeah, it is. It is such a bummer with social media. I feel like it's all pay to play now, where it's just
Yep.
they just want to squeeze as much money out of you as possible. That or, uh, be a woman with less clothes on.
Yeah, that's it, man. Or be one of these guys that just acts like a goose on social media with their shirt off, tailing venomous snakes and stuff, and putting the most thick Aussie accent they can put on. I just can't do that for reach and that. I just cringe every time I see it. So I'm happy now just to actually go and have the adventures and get the photos, and whatever happens to it after that is not the highest priority anymore. Whereas, when you're younger and you just start out your social media pages, you can get caught up in all the hype, and you sort of forget that it's actually about the animal and not about your ego and how many followers you get on social media and how much reach you get.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, your head is in such a good place. I mean, it's obvious how much you care about the animals, and like you can just tell that that's your number one priority. I mean, for crying out loud, you got bit by one trying to save it.
I think that's the best scenario, to get bitten by one.
Yeah, exactly. Especially you weren't doing something for the gram. All right, well. If you're ready, you were kind enough to provide some pictures, and I kind of want to go through some of these and hear the stories behind them. There we go. All right, so tell me what I'm looking at here, and what's the story behind this image?
This is a southwestern carpet python, Aurelia imbricata, and this one. I mean, there wasn't a real crazy adventure. I was doing the Nullarbor, which is a long stretch that starts in Western Australia and goes all across the bottom of South Australia along the coast. And it's just a really remote, wild place. I was just out there basically herping, and the sun was about to set, and I almost run over this snake. It was just stretched out from the vegetation, just catching a little bit of afternoon sun. And I narrowly missed it in my forward drive and quickly jumped out. And there was this really beautiful, with the, sub-adults, they just get that amazing pattern. And it was probably one of the nicest ones I've seen with, slight bits of orange in it. And I turn around and I'm getting this amazing sunset. So I literally just popped it up on that branch and was able to get the sunset on the Nullarbor behind it. So just one of those times where, the subject is that nice and the background's that nice that I was able to capture it all in one shot, which was really cool.
Oh my God. Yeah. It's breathtaking. And, was he pretty snappy with you or was he pretty laid back?
No, I don't actually recall this one, taking any swipes at me, and it's always a mixed bag when you get pythons, and usually, the younger they are, the more snappy they are, which just about any keeper and stuff is going to know. But this one was a sub-adult. It was actually pretty chilled, and hence why I actually got it to sit still on a log like that for more than 1 second while I got the photo. But just came together, that shot, and it was a good individual. I feel like most of the shots that you see where they're like this, where I've nailed the background and the subject, is just a chilled individual.
Yeah.
Unless it's just pure luck.
Oh man. And so what else were you seeing on that trip? Was that basically all you saw on that outing?
Yeah, this was a trip I actually got turned around in COVID. I was meant to go all the way into South Australia from Western Australia, but I got a hurried phone call from a mate saying, the news it's just been all over the news. They've shut the borders. You're not going to be able to get into South Australia turnaround. So I actually just focused more of my time along that bottom southeastern corner of Western Australia, where there's not much there except cattle stations and and farms and things like that. So I just did all the coastal tracks, and I was getting really nicely mottled coloured dugites, which are a venomous brown snake that we get over here in the southwest, and a couple of cool lizard species as well. But then I ended up just going north and up into the Northern Territory on that trip to Uluru, which was really cool.
What did you find there?
Thorny devils. There was one particular little hidden dragon. They call them pebble mimic dragons, and they mimic pebbles. So they'll be sitting up on a rock, and if they see a predator coming, or a bird or something like that, or a bird of prey, they'll quickly crawl down in amongst the pebbles and like arch their back up, and they make themselves look like a little stone. They're really cool. So there was a Centralian species that I hadn't got yet, so I went up into NT to get that, and got a really cool shot of Varanus gillani with Uluru in the background, which was one of my shots that I was actually going to include in here, but I had to sort of pick and choose, so that one didn't make it in.
What was in this image right here? What was the weather like? I mean, was it cool? Was it pretty nice out? Like it looks beautiful. Like it looks like it would be just like perfect.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to head down into the south of Australia, it starts to warm up around late October. So I think this was around the October-November mark. I went on this trip, and it was nice, man. It was really comfortable. Wasn't too hot, and there was just that little bit of cloud around, which really brought out the sunset. If it was just if there was no cloud, you just don't get those colours and texture in the horizon that you do when there's cloud. So it was really nice. Yeah.
And when you went out on this trip, how, like, walk me through that. Are you just like loading up your truck and then going out into the field for days, weeks? Like how long are you gone for?
Well, the older I've gotten, the shorter in duration my herping trips have come. Back when I started, I was loading up the vehicle for 6 weeks or 5 weeks at a time, and I'd go out and go hard, as hard as I could for that period. But I've sort of shortened my trips down to about 10 to 12 days now. I find that's the sweet spot, because if I just take Australia, for example, you're covering massive distances. Generally, you're going to places where it's really hot. There's lots of flies. You need the temperature to be as favorable as possible, which means it's pretty uncomfortable for you half the time. So, you're up, if you're on a trip, you're usually targeting diurnal species during the day, the morning, the afternoon. And then you're out road cruising at night looking for stuff, sometimes until midnight, and then you're photographing until 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. So you're running on probably an average of 4 to 5 hours sleep a night. And the 6 week trips used to buckle me. I think I'd get about 2 weeks in and just have to go and check into a hotel if I could or something, and just try and have 24 hours off. But now I find 10 to 12 days to be the sweet spot for herp trips.
And are you camping most of that time?
Yeah, so my four-wheel drive is basically just sort of set up to live out of. So I've got a big canopy on the back with a kitchen in it, and big fridge and an oven even, and I've got a rooftop tent built into the top of it, so I can just crawl up into the back of it and just fall asleep anywhere I need to. But it hasn't always been that way. I remember starting out just rolling out a swag in the dirt and sleeping in that, or then I went on to these pop-up tents that you sort of throw out, and they just sort of pop up, and they're good until you end up in some kind of sandstorm or big windstorm or anything like that, and then they're a bit flimsy. So had some wild nights trying to get some sleep in those.
And in those situations too, I mean, if you're just in like a sleeping bag or a little flimsy tent, Are you at all concerned about something venomous coming in to curl up with you?
It's more of a like it. It does happen, but I've never had it happen to me while I had a swag. And these days the swags are, they've got the fly net sort of thing, so they're all enclosed anyway. So I think back in the day when they were just a couple of bits of canvas that covered a mattress and you just flipped them open and slept in that, I think those instances might have happened a bit more to people, but it's never happened to me, luckily. So, yeah, I mean, lucky or unlucky, it might be a species I'd want to photograph.
Yeah. I don't mean it in an offensive way, but you are crazy. I mean it in the best way possible.
In the best way, the most endearing way possible.
All right, so this one's pretty wild. I advise anybody that's watching this right now to go to your Instagram profile and check out. I think you have a couple posts on this one, but so walk me through this. I mean, how did you end up? Well, what are we looking at first and foremost, and then how did you end up in front of it?
Yeah, well, this is a spectacle cobra. It was pretty high on my list to see when I was in Sri Lanka, but yeah, they're one of those species that are like brown snakes in Australia, where they're pretty hard to target. They show up all the time. People sight them all the time through villages because they're obviously cruising around chasing rodents, which are attracted by dwellings and stuff like that. But they're quite hard to just go out and hurt. And I was with a guide because Sri Lanka has really tough laws around wildlife, and you can't really just go out freely herping like you can in a lot of countries. So cruising along, walking through the forest in the afternoon, and we're just walking a trail through the jungle. And this cobra was literally crossed in front of us and was just on the left side of the trail. So, my guides run around and cut it off, and lucky there was this big boulder behind it, because it sort of went up the boulder and then saw me behind it and then turned around and just basically hooded up and started being defensive. So it meant that it sort of blocked the escape route. I couldn't lose it in the vegetation. And then, it allowed me to get really nice up close photos of it. Almost in situ, I guess. It's sort of hard. Like, obviously the snake's been disturbed and it's putting on a show, but it was really nice to actually just come across it then and there in the forest, because my guide was like, I've done this trail for 10 years and never seen a cobra in the forest before. So it was really amazing.
Wow. And yeah, how it seemed like in the video at first it was trying to flee, and then so it had to realize that it was completely cornered before it would hood up and put on that display. Is that normal, or do they immediately go into that display?
Oh, it's like any large mobile venomous snake. Like, these snakes have got plenty of speed, plenty of ability to be able to get away. And generally you'll only see defensive behavior from these snakes when they're cornered, or they feel like they don't have any other way to flee. It's the old fight or flight response. And, a lot of people have heard that, not even in wildlife terms before, but it's something that I educate people about, because when a wild animal is startled, it's going to behave in generally two ways. It's fight or flight. If they can flee, that's the number one option, because it increases their survivability. If they can get away and avoid a conflict, then they're winning, because most people don't understand that these snakes are so small in stature compared to us. It would be like an elephant walking up to us looking for a fight, So when we stand over such a small animal, yeah, they're going to turn around and get defensive. But if they can flee first, that's the number one option.
Where do you think your empathy for these animals came from? Because I mean, it's really striking. Like, you're not just looking at it from, these are important to have around. Like, you're really thinking about how the animal feels. Like where do you think that came from, or is it something that grew over time?
Man, that's actually a really good question, because it stems from my time on the farm in central Queensland. So I grew up for a period from about 11 years old through to, I was in the town till I was 18, but I was on the farm for 6 years in that period over my sort of teen years. And my mum married a farmer, so we had a big cattle property, and he had the the mentality that a good snake was a dead snake as well. And for me as a kid, you've got your mum just went along with it, obviously, because she was like, oh, he knows the land. She had no love for reptiles herself, but I was really fascinated by them. So, anything that resembled a snake, the stepdad would get out the gun and shoot it. So I got, quite sad when these instances would occur. And it wasn't until later in life where I started to get into snakes and identify them, and that I would look back and be like, oh man, he chopped the head off a harmless black-headed python because he thought it was a taipan. And that to me just felt so unfair for the animal. I had a lot of empathy for these animals. So I think that's what shaped my empathy for them, and then motivated me to sort of get out and educate people against that ignorant sort of belief that just because it's a snake, it's got to die, or just because it's venomous, it's dangerous, because it's not really the case, man. Like, it's potentially dangerous in the right situation, but until it bites you, it's not dangerous,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's an uphill battle, and man, yeah, I remember being a kid so many times and seeing, rat snakes and, corn snakes and eastern diamondbacks, and like somebody saying like, there's a snake, and you hear this commotion, and me being who I am, naturally drawn to these animals, like being so excited to see it, and then coming out and seeing it bloody and mangled and dismembered. And what you just said, like, nailed it. That sadness that just comes over you, where it's like, oh man, I wonder what makes people different like that. What makes people empathetic and love these animals and really passionate about them naturally, because it, like you said, it's not nurture, right? That's your nature, because you were surrounded by people that didn't really care about them.
Man, it's such a multifaceted issue, and it's quite fascinating. But, if you can generalize it, there's probably two major factors that come into it. And it's, do you have an innate fear of these animals? And then you get people like me who aren't scared of them at all. And I was more curious than scared. And then you've got people that are just innately scared of snakes. Like, they've never even had an experience with a snake, and they can't look at photos, and they're repulsed by them and all that. So I think that might be some, genetic hardwiring into humans that helped us survive when we were, cavemen and stuff like that. So there's the innate fear. But then there's also learnt behavior, and you'll see so many kids that are like fascinated by snakes. If you were to go and educate kids in a school, you'd find maybe like 20% of them, or even less, were really put off by snakes and really didn't want to have anything to do with them. But the general population of that class would then be fascinated and want to know everything about them and touch them and everything. So then, as we get older and we have this learnt behavior where it's either society telling us that these animals need to be exterminated because they're, far more dangerous than they are. And usually it's learnt behavior from the parents. So if the mum or dad is terrified of snakes, the kids learn that behavior, and then, it's only fair that they grow up with those beliefs as well. But direct experience and education are the things that combat that. So as people get older, we need to, there needs to be a lot more education about this stuff to stop that fear and ignorance, because a lot of it is just learnt behavior. And people just need to unlearn it. That's all.
What do you think? What do you think the best argument is when there's a parent with small kids and they just say, if I see a snake, I'm going to kill it. Like I have a hard time with that, right? Like I have a hard time saying, because I like, for me, it's vipers, rattlesnakes, I want them around, water moccasins, things like that. I want them around. But then when there is a parent that's concerned and you're like, damn, yeah, a 4-year-old kid, that venom would do a number on that child probably, so what is the argument, and how do you tell them that the animal should be here, and what is the best defense there?
Again, it just comes back to education and how good you are at sort of diffusing the situation. So I would just try and remind people that they are, to reframe them, instead of like this pest that shouldn't be there. People need to reframe them into, this is native wildlife that has a purpose in the ecosystem. And I guess trying to connect some empathy, that's the best way I did it. So if I could catch the snake when I would go out and do snake catching, I would then put it on display and show people that were willing to at least maybe change their perception. But you start to sort of gauge who are just so far gone that you're never going to be able to get through to them, to people that if they're a bit curious and they're obviously scared, but they're willing to sort of take some information in from the professionals that actually work with them every day. I would just try and connect to the empathy. And then the second thing I would do would be to just answer as many questions as possible, educate them as much as possible before I left, and then even try and, refer to some educational material that I've put out. So I've put out after so many years of snake catching and then seeing, and also people with so many misconceptions about snakes, I then put out like a 30-minute film, which sort of debunks a lot of myths. It educates people. I don't use scientific terminology, and I just sort of get across what Australians need to know about snakes. So then I found it as a really useful tool, because then I could just text message the link to the person that I caught the snake from and say, hey, if you've got a spare half an hour tonight, sit down and watch this with your kids. And that sort of helps as well. So I think connecting to the empathy and then trying to educate people is all you can really do. But I've come up across that argument so many times, and it's always a hard one. What about my kids? You just got to explain to them that they are far less dangerous than they have in their perception.
Yeah. I mean, statistically, a car going down the street is more dangerous to your child than a venomous snake, so it's but it just, I guess it's like you said, it's that innate fear that's kind of hardwired into us that probably drives that, that feeling of just get it out of here.
Yeah. Well, we have on average 20 deaths a year from, cute little honeybees that are in everyone's gardens, but you don't see parents out there like trying to chop up honeybees just for being, and same with even domestic dogs. We on average, if you look at the statistics, we have 2 deaths a year from kids getting mauled and killed by domestic dogs. You don't see people losing their mind every time they see a dog and trying to chop its head off, do you?
Yeah. No, yeah. And I think the other point that you made is a good one too, about recognizing who's a lost cause and just kind of moving on from there, because you're never going to win that fight. Yeah. And
Facebook is filled with them, man. Like the block list I have from my reptile page is just, grows every time I do a post, because there's just so many ignorant people out there that, they're just lost causes. But the general population are just misinformed and just need to have an open mind and then sort of educate themselves. And the more they educate themselves, the less fearful they become. Like when I was sitting in the hospital with my, arm bandaged up, the nurses were like, "You are literally the calmest snake bite patient I've ever seen in my life." And I said, "That's because, I'm a professional snake handler, and I completely understand what I'm in for, and I know that I'm not going to die. Like, I know I'm not in any danger. We have some of the best medical care in the world in Australia, and I got to hospital within 20 minutes. So, because I had that underpinning knowledge of what I was in for and how long venom takes to act on the body and what species I've been bitten by, there was nothing to fear. So I even did like a video of me in the hospital. It's not the bestly narrated video because I was pretty wiped out, tired, and in the hospital from a snake bite incident. But I, tried to explain and sort of debunk some of the myths around snake bite, because having a heart rate that's racing is not doing you any favors when you've been bitten by a snake. But of course, people are going to freak out if they get bitten or think they've been bitten, So just educating himself on the process, what to do, how to try and stay calm. That's the best way to increase their survivability.
Did you need anti-venom when that bite happened?
No, this was really interesting to me because I could actually feel the pain spreading up my arm, but the bandage was doing such a good job at retarding that venom from spreading. Over every hour, I felt like the pain, went from my finger, then to my hand, then to my forearm, then to my elbow, and then it sort of started to fade out. And after 7 hours in hospital with the bandage on, they finally took the bandage off, and they're like, "Okay, we're ready for any sort of systemic reaction." And they took it off, and nothing happened. So it was one of those times where it was a juvenile snake. It gave me the most mild of envenomings, and the bandage did its job. It allowed my body to deal with it in the limb. And then by the time, bandage came off, I didn't end up needing antivenom.
Do you think that was your first and last bite, or do you feel like with your line of work and the position that you're in that there will be another bite?
It's hard to say. Like, you speak to guys that have been doing this for a lifetime, they're in their 70s and 80s, and they're just like, "Oh, it's not a matter of if it'll happen, it's a matter of when it'll happen." And for me, that sort of happened to me maybe, I don't know, I guess it was about 6 or 7 years in. And I hope it's not going to happen again. So far, so good. I've photographed hundreds of venomous snakes without incident. I think the photography space is where I really know what I'm doing, and I can sort of generally control what happens in that scenario to the best of my ability. You're still dealing with wild animals, but I think when you're catching and handling them that the risk goes up, and hopefully it's the last time. But if it happens again, I know what to do. So I've always got a plan and safety measures in place. So
now, when you were dealing with the spectacled cobra, was it dramatically a different experience than what you are used to dealing with in Australia?
Well, lucky for me, this was maybe the 5th or 6th cobra that I've interacted with, and I've had a couple of interactions with king cobras, and even been able to pick one up and hold it up while it's focused on my friends in front of me. So I understand cobra behavior enough to be able to handle them and photograph them safely. And the best thing about cobras is they're nowhere near as dangerous as our highly venomous elapids over here because of their defensive display. They use all their strength and muscles to be able to hood up like that. And if you tried to tense your neck as hard as you could, do you think you would be able to lift your head to bite or turn it to bite they sort of forego a lot of their athletic ability when they put up like that, because they're using all of these muscles to stand up tall and look imposing and intimidating, that when they strike, they can only kind of come forward and down. They can't lift their head to go up any higher. So, I've done the old, kiss a king cobra on top of the head.
No.
I've done all that in my younger days, but
Now you are crazy.
I don't know, man. You sort of grow up watching documentaries, and I'd seen it done before, and I just had to give it a go myself. But
Dude,
that's
wild.
stuff you do when you're a bit younger, and these days most of that's out of my system. But and I keep all that stuff off social media. Like, they're just you see guys that just can't wait to get the most venomous snake they can find and then show themselves handling it on social media. But I think that stuff is, if you're going to do that, you're doing it for the wrong reasons. Whereas when I've done all that stuff, I've got all those photos, I've had all those experiences, but they've all been a personal thing for me to tick off. Like, bucket list thing for me was to kiss a king cobra on the head or handle one, or, I've literally been out in the middle of nowhere and I've been so sure that I went out and found a Ingram's brown snake out in the middle of Australia, and we were so far from help, and it would have been a really terrible scenario if it had bitten me. But I interacted with this animal for around an hour because it was so placid, it was so calm, it had no interest in biting. And then for a personal connection sort of moment, I just felt like I was not in any danger to pick this animal up, and I picked it up and I was letting it run through my hands and I was just having the best time. But none of that stuff has ever seen the light of day, because if you put it out and show people, then you're obviously doing it for the wrong reasons. But that was just a moment for me, just to have a connection with this animal of like, look, this is one of the most venomous snakes we have in Australia, and it has no intention of biting me. It's just curious and calm and placid. So,
man, that's wild. But good for you keeping it to yourself, because I'm sure you end up with people that copy, that kind of behavior, right? And then, they're just excited to get out and hold a venomous snake.
Yeah, and again, the context is taken out of it. Like, if you've got a 30-second or a minute video of you handling a highly venomous snake in the middle of nowhere, like, then kids are going to think that that's safe to do and potentially go out and do it and get themselves in strife where, they don't see that I've interacted with this animal for an hour already. I've got the perfect shot. I'm 100% that it's not going to bite. Well, 99.9, and sort of willing to take that risk. They just don't have the context. And then if they do it themselves, and you've inspired that, then you're partly responsible, aren't you?
Yeah, for sure. We definitely have some of that going on here in the States, unfortunately. All right, let's check out. All right, so what do we got here? Set this one up for us.
Yeah, good old Aussie black-headed python. This is the exact species that my stepdad chopped the head off because he thought it was a taipan. And didn't even realize taipans don't even occur in the area. So,
that's so sad.
Getting back to the shot, this is just when I was starting to explore nightscape photography. So, doing long exposure. This is a 30-second exposure to get the moon and the stars in, and all I've done is just had the flash freeze the animal, and then the shutter stays open for another 30 seconds and captures the nightscape. And this is just one that I was able to pull off, and I love the results, man. It's really, really cool.
Oh my God, yeah, it's beautiful. So is this pretty close to home?
No, this was up in the Pilbara, so this is probably 16, 18-hour drive north.
Wow.
Yeah, but it's one of the meccas of it. If you speak to herpers, Pilbara is just one of the meccas of Australian herping. So partly one of the reasons why I moved over to Western Australia back in 2016 was to get to this area and photograph the species up there. And I mean, you don't have to go to the Pilbara to photograph a black-headed python, but it was a cool, quiet night on the roads, and this was one of the only individuals I found. So, gave it some attention and was able to probably pull off the best black-headed python shot I've ever done. So, it was cool.
Man, so how long were you out in the field before you found this guy?
Oh, this is not even that long after dark. I think it was probably only an hour or two after dark, and it was just one of those nights where nothing was really moving. But pythons are obviously heavier bodied, and they can retain the heat much longer than smaller elapids can. And you generally find when you're herping out at night, if the only thing you find is a python, you're not going to find much else because they can just stay warmer for longer than the other snakes. So this was just one of those nights, and I was like, okay, it's going to be a dead night. I've been lapping the roads for 2 hours, and this is all I've come across. At that point, I just thought, oh, it's a time to practice maybe a longer photography shoot. But I think this still only took me about 10 minutes to set up the shot, and then it didn't take me that long to actually get it, because if you can set up the shot before the snake's even in the frame, you just need to then introduce the snake into the frame, and there you have it. And it saves a lot of mucking around with the animal, a lot of it's also animal welfare. Like, I like to reduce the time that I'm interacting with the animal as much as possible. So it's really good practice to set up your shot, exactly how you want it. Because you can imagine, if you're looking at the shot and you just take the animal out of it, you've got a nice area in the foreground for the animal to be. I've set up the shot. I've basically got it looking exactly the same as this, and then I introduce the snake, and then hopefully it's done and dusted as quick as possible. And that's probably one of the best way to do post photography with snakes, is get your test shot done first.
And do you have like a little mini tripod that the camera is set up on, or are you just setting it down in the dirt?
It's kind of a bastardized tripod. It used to be one of those, I don't know if you've ever seen them, but they're these old metal twin flash brackets, and they have arms that go out, on whatever axis you want them to go on. And you used to mount 2 flashes on them, and then you would be able to light up the subject from both sides. And that's usually what field guide shots kind of need. They need a well-lit subject on both angles. So you would use these two flashes, basically. But then I got rid of those, and I quickly sort of went away from that style of photography. But then I had this flash bracket that had these 2 perfect arms that would sit out, and it would hold my camera, an inch or 2 off the ground. So you could still get low, and your camera isn't taking a nosedive into the dirt. So nice.
What kind of flash do you use?
I just use a speedlight flash. The big cumbersome ones. I'll just use that. And I'll generally use it on a tripod I've got a big umbrella diffuser, and I'll set up a tripod beside me. So then I'm free to move the camera around, because, I've tried all different types of lighting methods, and so far this is the best one I can come up with for photographing by myself in the field. Whereas it's nice if you've got, a mate beside you to hold the flash in all these different positions. But if you're out there by yourself, I needed to quickly sort of come up with something that would work for me on my own,
Yeah. So how many days was this trip? You said it was what, a 18, 19 hour drive out there?
This particular trip was actually, trying to remember, I've been to the Pilbara about 6 or 7 times, so I'm trying to remember exactly. I think this was a really quick one during COVID, where I got away for 8 days, I think it was, and I did about 6,000 kilometers, which Can't really convert that into miles for you Americans right now in my head, but it was a lot, man. I was doing, almost 1,000 Ks a day, but I was just so hungry to get out of, lockdowns and society at that point. And I'd had all these trips planned and COVID kept messing with them. So I was lucky to sneak off, and I had like 8 days. So I was like, I'm going to the Pilbara, and just took off and just ticked off so many species on the way, which was cool.
Wow. Yeah, that's 3,700 miles.
Yeah, there you go.
That is crazy.
In 8. So I think that was the most kilometers or miles I've ticked off in a short amount of time. But that's what happens when you're sort of cooped up and you're just itching to get out there for too long. Yeah.
Wait, does anything? What else have you seen out there that really comes to mind?
The repeated thing that I kept going back for was the melanistic or black-headed form of Wellesley. So they're a death adder, and they're called the Pilbara death adder. They're found throughout the Pilbara region, but they're pretty much generally always this like rich sort of red color, similar to the substrate in this photo. And then you'll get a morph that's got the black head, melanistic head, and these dark bands on it, and they're just stunning. I almost again included it in this this sort of podcast, but then I was just feared I'd probably try and do too many stories. But I'd gone to the Pilbara, 6 or 7 times hoping to get this snake, and I've racked up over 100 death adders, and none of them were this color morph. So this trip was actually the time I actually got that after many trips up there trying for it.
Wow. And so dealing with these death adders and everything, and being in such remote locations, do you always have a partner, or are you often solo and you're just out there by yourself?
Mostly solo, but where I can tee it up, there's sort of 2 other guys I generally go on herp trips with, and it'll just be one of those at a time. So as I've gotten older, man, I've just, the days of going out with like 6, 7, 8 mates herping on herp trips dwindle because I'm 40 now. So, mates have misses and kids, and, I'm sort of starting that phase of my life now as well. So, your social circle sort of starts to shrink a bit. And, I actually sort of figured out through, a lot of trips that the best thing is just you and a mate, because you've just got so much more freedom to do what you guys want to do. There's not, if you go out with eight guys, there's 8 different egos and 8 different decisions and opinions and all that stuff. So they're great trips, and they're something I used to like when I was younger, but the older I've gotten, I just sort of gravitate towards myself or one other. And then it also, again, getting back to animal welfare, it also helps with, if you've got 8 guys wanting to photograph one animal, that's pretty stressful on the animal. It's just something I don't like to witness anymore or be part of. So I like it just me or one other guy. You can get your shots quickly and move on without too much stress for the animal.
Yeah. How big was this black-headed python?
That probably only, I'm going to go with maybe about 1.4 meters.
Okay.
Sort of, yeah.
Right on.
Not too big. I mean, the wide angle lens can make things look gigantic, but it's probably about the 1.4, 1.5 meter mark.
That's awesome. He's beautiful. All right, let's check out the next one. Oh, and when you were in when you got the spectacled cobra, did you happen to see any pythons while you were over there?
No. I really would have liked to seen a rock python, but again, they're quite hard to target. Yeah. A lot of the places you'll see them are like in Yala National Park or in these like highly controlled national parks where you can't even get out of your vehicle. So, the guides have told me that they're pretty hard to come by. They're just things that show up. and they're really hard to target. So maybe a bit more common in the arid and the dry zones. But the first time I went, we were just working in the wet zone, and the other one was the sand boas as well. I would have really liked to have seen one of them, but I think they're going to need another trip where we specifically target them.
Yeah. All right, let's see here. Oh, this is a crazy one. All right, so what am I looking at here, and yeah, what's the story behind this one?
Well, I thought I'd give you guys a bit of a sneak preview of something I haven't published yet, and this one goes live on Monday night. I've scheduled it because it's probably my most recent shot. This is the one I just got in Sri Lanka about 2 weeks ago. So, Sri Lankan green pit viper, they're such stunning vipers, and they're the only they're a monotypic genus in Sri Lanka. They're the only other than hypnale, like the hump-nosed vipers. There's 3 species of those there, but this is the only sort of arboreal pit viper that they have there. So it's huge on the list to tick off over there. And I've been lucky enough to see 2 on 2 trips now, but found this one in ambush it was sort of up a bank and then up a tree about 2 meters. And I've got some really cool shots of it in situ. And then when it started to move, it started to work its way down. And then we just sort of repositioned it somewhere, because it was on a bank, I really couldn't photograph it well. So we just repositioned it on a log, and I was able to snap some pretty cool shots. And I just love this one with the tongue fully extended.
Oh man. Yeah. Just the contrast between that pitch black background, and that is absolutely stunning. The length of that thing's tongue too is wild.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's something that I was actually surprised to sort of nail, because I'm not really into rainforest close-up macro photography. It's not something I'm very well versed in. But I've gone down that after my first trip to Sri Lanka, and when we were just photographing in rainforest and doing a lot of in situ stuff close up, I didn't have the right setup for it, and I was a bit disappointed with the results. So when I came back this time, I had 12 months before I had planned to go back, and I was like, when I go back, I'm going to make sure that I've got the right macro photography set up. So this time I went back with a new diffuser that was just all set up on camera, so I could just pull out the camera, turn everything on, and then shoot stuff in situ. Obviously, this particular shot's not in situ, but that close-up macro photography in the rainforest was something I needed to really work on, and I'm pretty happy with the result of this one. And I've got some really cool shots from that trip that I can't wait to share now that I've nailed the setup.
Yeah. You knocked it out of the park. That is an incredible image. And so this was in Sri Lanka as well. So I'm assuming you had a guide again? Yep.
Yeah, I have a guide. I've got sort of my go-to guide. He's one of the best, if not the best, in the country, and he's the man. So basically, he's got all the spots. He's got all the the hookups with local wildlife authorities, and he's got areas that he's allowed to work in. And he's the guy to sort of go to when you go to these countries, because there's just no real way to get around Sri Lanka and find what you want to see in a short amount of time without a guide. And one of my favorite things is authenticity. So I really, I used to not like the idea of a guide, because my ego would sort of get in the way, and I'd be like, nah, I want to find everything myself. But you quickly learn when you go to these new countries that, without a guide, you're just wasting your money and your time. So this is definitely one of those countries, because of the strict wildlife laws, that you need a guide. I've already heard of a story of a pretty experienced and prominent photographer being, either banned from the country. They tell me he's been banned from the country, but they sort of told me, that's an example of what can happen if you just try and go out and do everything yourself. So,
wow. Jeez. Yeah. So you need to know somebody that knows the authorities and.
Yeah, knows where you can work, and um, the way they explain it, you go into jail and stuff if you're caught handling anything or with anything in your possession just to photograph. So even if you were to catch a gecko and then just try and reposition it or something on a tree branch and you were caught, then could equal jail time. And I don't really want to spend any time in a Sri Lankan jail.
Oh God. Yeah. I can't imagine that would be any fun. So how long were you out before finding this one?
Well, we're actually looking for a species of dragon over there that was arboreal and up in the trees, and we'd spent all night looking for this one species and hadn't found anything sort of by nearly midnight. So we'd done the stretch that he usually finds them in, couldn't locate one. It was cool we ended up locating about 11 vine snakes, which was a personal record for my guide. And, that was really cool. Photographed a few of those, but then about midnight we went down along the river, along this stretch of river that he's got. And, we literally found this viper within, I don't know, maybe 15 minutes of walking this trail. So it was pretty amazing.
Wow. How long is that flight from where you are in Australia to Sri Lanka?
Sorry, say that again. Just dropped out a bit.
Oh, how long is the flight from where you are in Australia to Sri Lanka?
You got to go via Singapore from Perth. So in total, it's probably only about 8 hours of flying over 2 flights. But by the time you do layovers and then you're getting in around midnight, it's weird. We seem to only get midnight flights in and out of Sri Lanka. So I learned basically on this last trip that it was too far to go just for 11 days. So first time it was for 5 weeks, which was great and could justify the distance. But this time I only went for 11 days, and I thought that's probably pushing it for coming home, because you're just shattered by the time you get home, because you're not flying out till nearly 1 a.m, and then it's like red eye flights and layovers, and not.
And geez Louise, 5 weeks, that's such a long period of time. So are you getting like a hotel room that you're basically living out of for that period?
Well, the first trip was a 5-week trip with my partner, because she used to live in Sri Lanka, and she does like yoga and wellness retreats. So we actually went over there for 5 weeks on a holiday, surfing mostly, and she had to run a retreat there. So I was able to sneak off for 2-3 days in that whole 5 weeks. And that's when I hooked up with the guide the first time. And I only got about three or so days of herping and wildlife photography, but it was really cool. I did a safari over there in Yala National Park, which is amazing. Saw so many species, but not just reptiles, it's just wildlife in general. But you just have the long lens and you're in a safari car and just, living that dream of being a bit of a wildlife photographer with a big telephoto lens. So that was cool.
Man,
got to see
what are some of the animals that you saw on the safari that really stand out?
Oh, leopards are the highlight. We got to see 2. One was like pretty far away, sleeping in a tree, but we could get it with the long lens. And then the other one we were sort of tracking because we could hear deer making like distress calls. And then the leopard actually jumped in front of our safari car, like jumped across the road, probably only 10 meters in front of us, which was cool.
Wow.
Just saw heaps of stuff. Heaps of mugger crocodiles, and all the water holes, buffalo. Saw a really cool, they call it a mouse deer, dart out in front of us. So many species, so many, Bengalensis, Varanus bengalensis, the Bengal monitor over there, saw so many of them. They're just everywhere.
Wow. Man, That's awesome. All right. So here we go. So this is back to the motherland, right?
This is, back to Australia. This is up in North Queensland, and it's the the first frilly I ever got to photograph, which was really cool. This was on my first 6-week trip around Australia, and I went all the way into central Australia, saw Uluru, and then went directly north up to Darwin. And as you can see, it's wet season in the background, like everything's thriving, everything's green, it's all tropical up there. And this was the first frilly I saw up there, and it was, it's just a beautiful individual, like all the red markings. They come in 3 different color variants. Up in the north, like in Darwin, they're usually this sort of red color. But then you head across over to Queensland, they sort of start to turn grey with like a yellow frill. And then if you head the other direction and you come over into northern Western Australia, you can get really cool orange, like bright orange and yellow sort of markings in the frill. So I photographed all 3, and this was the first one from Darwin. So it's a bit of a special shot for me. And I chose it just because in Australia we have some really iconic lizards, and the frilly is got to be top 5. So
absolutely. Are they all bluff and not too much bite, or did that one come after you?
Oh, they'll bite you, but generally that's if you're messing with them, like for photography or whatever. I've definitely been bitten by them. And I've had, the one in northern Western Australia I photographed. If you're looking on my social media, you'll see it because it's so close to my lens, and the frill is like takes up most of the shot. And that actually like lunged and tried to bite my camera a number of times. I had to sort of get the shot quickly and let it go because it was pretty defensive.
Now, was this guy staged? Like, did you kind of do the same thing you did with the black-headed python, where you kind of figured out your background and your framing and everything, and then just brought in your subject and plopped him down?
Pretty much. That's what happened, because the way that they usually are sitting is they'll sit vertically on a tree and they'll sort of shift around. And that's what this one was doing, is sitting on a small tree and shifting around. And, these days I get my telephoto lens out and I'll try and get in situ shots from a distance. But this is at the start of my photography journey. And I was just so excited to get my first frilly that I just caught it the first chance I got. And, I'm also one of those hands-on people that love to catch and then look at the animal up close and have an interaction with it. I don't know what it is, but I've had to suppress that urge to catch everything. I don't know whether it's being a snake catcher in the earlier days or just even a kid just going out on the farm and just catching everything you could just to see it. That just seemed to be the way that you started to interact with these animals. And now the older I get, I try and sit back a bit, see if I can observe some natural behavior. But I will admit I got a bit excited with my first one and I did just catch it, plonk it on a log and photograph it. But a lot of the time it's also what you have to do if you're going to photograph reptiles. Like, they live in pretty inaccessible places sometimes, and they're quick to disappear into vegetation. And if you're going to get any chance of a shot, the unfortunate reality is sometimes you've got to catch the animal to do it. But where I can now, I sort of steer away from it as much as possible, unless that's the only way I'm going to get the shot.
Yeah. It's I'm the same way. I love grabbing things and holding them. And now that I have kids, I try to tell them like, hey, you don't need to grab every snake you see. Let it do its thing. Watch it. And it still counts. Grabbing it doesn't mean that it's any more special.
Or found it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so I think that's a good formula. If anyone's younger and into their herping, just to try and get to that point as quick as possible where you do, if the situation allows, sit back, watch it, try get some natural behavior. And if it's taken off and you've just got long lens photos, half the time you're going to see something really cool, a behavior that you never would have seen if you just run up and grabbed it. So I'm definitely doing a lot more of that as I get older. And the faster you get to that point, the better. And I mean, better it is for the animal, better it is for everyone else if they get to see a bit of natural behavior in a photo instead of just the defensive posture, you know. But I am pretty guilty of that in my younger years, but I'm trying to steer away from that as much as possible these days.
Well, yeah, and I mean the difference between photography and herping, you know, just for the sake of seeing a species is so different, right? Like this is such a beautiful image, and you know, it's kind of a whole different ball game, you know, just setting it up and capturing that is well worth it.
Well, what I've gotten really good at is gentle handling. Like you don't just, if people are picturing me just like roughhousing this animal into position for a photo, like, yeah, if it's when you initially catch an animal, if it's struggling and squirming and stuff, you do have to restrain it. But what I've learned to do very quickly is release your grip on the animal as much as possible. And like you just get this animal that's gone from being quite defensive to just being calm. Like that, you know, obviously in their mind, they're like, oh, this thing's going to eat me. So the sooner you can get across with your body language and the way you handle it, that you mean it no harm, the quicker you're going to get the result with the animal. And you just see, I think what I've become a bit of a student in and quite well versed in is gentle manipulation of the subject. And, you know, if you can just, you know, tickle it here or, you know, give it a, you know, tickle on the tail or whatever, you know, there's so many different methods you can do to just gently manipulate the animal where you're not causing it any sort of undue stress or any more undue stress. That's what I like to do these days.
You don't grab like crocs or anything, do you?
Yeah, I've definitely got photos of smaller crocs that I've caught, and not that many actually. I've only sort of caught a couple, but I'm not doing the Steve Irwin jumping out of the boat in croc infested waters in murky water for a shot. But you know, there's times where I'll go and look in really shallow freshwater streams, and you might find small freshwater crocodiles in those parts at nighttime. And yeah, I've pounced on one and set one up for a photo before.
Nice.
Otherwise, you're just getting these two glowing eyes staring back at you, and you're not going to get a chance of a shot at all. So,
yeah, we were. I was down in the Everglades here in Florida with a couple friends, and we were fortunate enough to see a crocodile laying eggs on the side of the road.
Oh, sick!
Yeah, it was pretty wild. Yeah,
that's gold, isn't it? Like,
yeah, and I mean, so what's funny is I'm like the 33% of our group that thinks that it was laying eggs. I didn't have them convinced. Because I guess, so I think that they imagined if a crocodile is laying eggs, it's going to be like an alligator nest, which are these huge piles of, you know, debris and foliage and everything. And, but the crocodiles from what I've read, they can just kind of dig a hole in some sand, almost like a turtle, and just dump the eggs, and that's it.
Yep.
And so although we never saw eggs, she was laying with her head, you know, a little distance from the road, and just sand and soil kind of sprayed out behind her. And every now and then you'd hear her strain and kind of push something out. And I'm like, I'm sorry, but I'm convinced she's laying eggs.
Oh yeah, man. Well, like, yeah, it certainly sounds like it. I mean, I've never seen a crocodile lay eggs in my personal experience, so but it definitely sounds like it.
Well, and when we were out there, we saw these signs. It's this big long road, and it said like crocodiles crossing road, and we're like, yeah, what are the odds we're going to see one? You know?
Yeah.
But I guess a few days prior, some guy was going 55 down the road and hit a female and just sprayed eggs everywhere. And
oh wow, that's
killed her. And you're driving through the national park, so you'd think you'd be a little bit aware and looking for these
and you
animals,
think
but
crocodile would stand out pretty quickly. But I mean, if you're doing that in 55 miles, so nearly 100 k's an hour.
Yeah. It's
it happens here too, man. You just get these massive goannas just splattered on the road, and you're like, how'd you not see that?
Yeah, that's terrible. We saw the Everglades is full of invasive species, and we saw a giant green iguana with its head crushed because it was, I guess, going out to cross the road and somebody clipped it. But my word, this thing was enormous. Like just huge. It must have been 4 or 5 feet long from tip to tip. But
yeah, I imagine the Everglades are a bit like Darwin and Northern Australia, where it's just tropical, and there's plenty of animals, plenty of food, like the ecosystem's just teeming in the wet period. I'm really looking forward to going there one day.
Oh yeah, hell yeah, hit me up when you come. Well, I'm working on getting on some pythons.
Sounds good. Sounds great.
All right, so what's this picture here? What are we looking at?
This is a common death adder, and this was in South Australia in a place called Coffin Bay. A lot of people like to make jokes about the location of where I found, a highly venomous snake called the death adder in Coffin Bay. So it's pretty fitting. But man, this was like a gravid female, and she was just a dream to photograph. Hey, and again, I didn't do it. I handled her a little bit, but this was a snake I could have really just picked up and just let run through my hands. She was amazing.
Wow.
And the moon was rising. So I was like, okay, this was it. During the time that I was exploring nightscape photography and doing those sort of freeze frame shots with the moon in the background. And the cool thing about this one is usually the moon turns out to be a star because of having a high aperture.
Mm-hmm.
I think I was shooting around f/22 or something like that, or f/20. So the moon just becomes this bright star in the sky, and you'll see all the, this looks like a massive star. But when the moon sort of gets behind some clouds that are coming across, it'll give this like little glow. And you can tell it's the moon, but it doesn't have that star-like appearance because it's being diffused by the clouds, which is really cool. So I love this shot. It's really moody, sort of sets the scene.
Yeah, it's beautiful. So how long were you out before finding this girl?
This was right at the end of the night I had 2 nights in Coffin Bay, and the first night I found a juvenile tiger snake, and that and the death adder was my target for the night herping. So first night I just photographed the juvenile tiger snake and actually got the moon in the background as well. Then the second night, moon rising again, got the death adder. So the 2 nocturnal species I wanted in 2 nights, which doesn't always happen.
Yeah, man. Yeah, that's a beautiful one. All right, so what are we looking at here?
The inland taipan. Most Americans would know this is the most venomous snake in the world, but I really, these days, I try and stay away from that terminology because it's not very accurate. And it's just mostly hype that people like to regurgitate without really doing their research. But anyway, highly venomous inland taipan, one of 3 taipan species we have in Australia, and this is probably about the 5th one that I was able to locate and photograph, and I love this shot. It exactly sums up the temperament of this individual. I'm going to go with she because sometimes I just get a vibe of what sex the snake is, and I just sort of refer to it as a he or a she. But I reckon she was. This was a crazy shoot, man. If you guys could actually watch. If we had someone to film the footage of this shoot, this was a handful of a snake. It was a warm morning. It was a warm morning. It's 1.8 meters long. We found this taipan. We caught it. Obviously got it in a bag. We're high-fiving. We've traveled thousands of kilometers to get this snake. We're over the moon. I'm with my snake catching buddy, and we've caught plenty of snakes on the Sunshine Coast, and then we'd gone on this trip together purely to find these, the number one target. And we went to inland Queensland, and it was just dead. We traveled thousands of kilometers. It was just dead. There was no reptiles, no life. The area was just suffering severe drought. So we pushed on to the top, it was like the northwest corner of South Australia, and pushed down into taipan sort of country, into the black soil. And this place was firing, and we got this taipan, and I was high-fiving my mate and everything, got it in the bag. Then we're both like, oh, we really need a pee. So we're both having a pee on the side of the road. And I just glanced left up the road and see another 1.8 meter taipan crossing 20 meters just up the road. So I'm, quickly, finishing what I had to do, and I'm sprinting after this snake, and I catch it. And, in moments later, we've got two 1.8 meter taipans in the bag ready to photograph, and we were just couldn't believe it happened. Your jaw's on the ground still from the luck you've just had. And
wow.
When we photographed them, we photographed the one I had first, and it was like placid, calm, cruising around, got really cool shots of it for my mate. And then we go, okay, you photograph this one. Yep, got that done. And then it was my turn to photograph a little bit later in the morning. Things had warmed up a little bit. And then my snake just had the complete opposite temperament. And it was one of those really cool moments of where it hits you that you just can't characterize snakes by as a species as a whole. You can't say, oh, inland taipans are crazy, man. They're wild, they're vicious, they're this, they're that. They're not. They're completely different from individual to individual. So same morning, same temperature, same size snake. One was a chiller, and then this one was at the opposite of that spectrum. She was quite defensive. So
the opposite of chill.
The opposite of chill. And luckily my mate is such a good snake handler. He's better than me, and he had the job of positioning this snake into the frame for me, and then getting it to stay there while I photographed it. And he had his hands full, man. And akubras, our
absolutely. I own one.
Yeah. So he's got an akubra on, and it's the only thing that he can put in front of, he's laid the snake down, but all it wanted to do was advance and either bite me or him. So he's got his akubra in front of the snake, and it's biting his akubra, and there's venom and stuff all on the inside of his akubra. And he's using it to sort of keep the snake in a defensive posture and just keep back from me. I'm within a meter, maybe 75 centimeters from the snake. So he's got the akubra between me and, my lens, and he just takes it away for me to grab this shot of it, before it's trying to advance and bite us. But if you could have seen the footage of that shoot, you just went, look at these crazy Australians using an akubra to stop a highly venomous snake from biting them.
Oh, what a wild story.
Yeah. She was a cool snake, man. But it was one of those fast and furious shoots where it's just, you got to get the shot and you got to let the snake be on its way, because it's not tolerating your presence at all.
Yeah, man, that is wild. And so you were a meter away from it?
Within a meter, yeah. It's usually because I don't know what I gravitated towards is I really like to tell stories. It's what I'm most passionate about. So with my photography, I quickly realized that, the ID style shots didn't work well for me, where it was just the snake. A lot of the times they're under a hide, which is just like a black piece of plastic, usually what people have at the base of their pot plants. They use those plastic sort of tubs, and they flip them over and they cut an archway in them and they put them down, and then they introduce the snake into that, and it curls up thinking it's nice and safe, and then they take the hide away and they quickly grab a shot, right? That's how most snake photography is done in books. And it's a macro shot, super close on a 45-degree angle where you get to see all of the snake. There's no background in it other than the substrate that it's on. And I just quickly went away from that photography because I'm like, it doesn't tell the story. So I started using wide-angle lenses where I could get the background. But one of the things you have to do is get nice and close to the snake in the foreground to show all of the snake's detail. Because if you just got this, habitat shot with a snake far away, and, it just doesn't work. You don't show the snake. So to get all of the elements right, I have to use a wide angle lens. And that means I got to get really close to the snake. And then that means that you want to have a lot of experience in reading snake behavior if you're going to get that close.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, are you using a flash in this image, or is it all natural lighting?
No, I'll definitely use flash photography, because if you're going to expose the background correctly with the foreground, a lot of the time the foreground is too dark, and you'll have the sky and the background all all composed right, and then the foreground will be really dark. So then I introduce a flash to light up the foreground.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So even during the day, I'm 99% I'm using flash.
I got to get a flash. I don't have one. I need to get one. It's kind of daunting, though.
You're on as soon as you start working with light, it's a whole new ball game, and it's probably one of your biggest frustrations and one of your biggest, hurdles to overcome is lighting the shot well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely an art form. That is without a doubt. All right, so what are we looking at here? I mean, freaking incredible image. Jeez. And so walk me through this one.
This was on an expedition into the Great Victoria Desert, which is about 1,500 kilometers. If you like, you can do the calculations on that as well. So inland of Perth lies the Great Victoria Desert. And I went on an expedition or a herp trip, don't need to talk it up, to photograph the Western Desert taipan. So this was 2017. I'd just moved to Western Australia, and the Western Desert taipan was the last one in the three, taipan trio that I had to photograph. So I pitched the idea to Australian Geographic, and they said, cool, if you go in there and you find this taipan, we'd really like to see your photos, and if we like your photos, we'll let you write an article about it. And I think what got me over the line with the pitch to them was less than 20 people had probably recorded this snake in the wild and photographed it, and it was only described in 2006/2007 from a museum specimen they had over here. They thought it was just a big brown snake, and then a guy called Brad Marion was he's a really experienced herpetologist over here in Western Australia. He was looking at the museum records and had a look at this snake in a jar, and he was like, that's not a brown snake, that's a taipan. So then they looked at where it was from, and it was out here in the Great Victoria Desert, and they were like, okay, well, we need to go out there and figure out if this is another species of taipan. So they went out and they found it in 2007, and then subsequently described it as a new species. So, only 10 years later, I was over here and I just wanted to go and find it. And, pitched it to OzGeo, and they accepted the pitch, and I went out there and found it. But I came across the first large venomous snake I came across in the desert was this mulga snake. And it was probably about 1.5 meters long. and it had its head in a bush. And we're zipping down the dirt road at about 80 kilometers an hour, and I just spot this, snake on the side of the berm right in the afternoon, because what they'll do is they'll get up on the berms and they'll bask in the late afternoon sun. And then mulga snakes become active at night. So they'll sort of come out in this late afternoon and then become active shortly afterwards, in the right temperature, I should say. And yeah, this snake just had its head in a bush, and we just stopped in a cloud of dust and raced over to it with our cameras ready. And when it spun around and saw us, this is what we were presented with. And I was able to get some really cool shots. And I just nailed one with the sun in the background. So this actually became the shot.
Man. Yeah, that is gorgeous. And is that like their threat display to try to scare things off?
Yeah. This is one of sort of two common threat displays. This is probably the most, this is the most imposing, and they just rear up like a cobra, flatten their neck out. And a lot of people don't realize that our Australian snakes do this, and we've got quite a few that sort of will arch up and rear up like this and flatten out their neck and try and sort of look like a cobra. So it's just sort of a common defensive posture that a snake, a large mobile venomous snake, will sort of go to look more imposing. But mulga snakes like this will advance towards you like that. Same as cobras, but cobras are a little bit more measured and a bit more patient, and they'll just sit up and they'll sort of wait for you to come close. But, mulga snakes will charge at you like this, and that's sort of what was happening here. So I've got off one or two shots and then had to move back and reposition, and it was a bit of a fast and furious shoot, but managed to fire off this one.
Wow. Yeah, it's very intimidating posture.
Yeah, and you can imagine you have to have stuff like this if you got wild camels towering over you, and all kinds of other large fauna that's going to step on you or even worse.
Man. All right. So what are we looking at here?
Well, this is the result of that trip I was just talking about. So good that you brought this one up next, because this is the Western Desert taipan, Oxyuranus temporalis.
Wow.
So this is probably a 1.6 or 7 meter snake. And again, man, I got female energy from this snake. She was just so chill. We got out to the desert. We camped the night. The next morning was our first session looking for this snake, and we literally found it within, I think, about an hour and a half of lapping the dirt roads out there.
Wow.
And she was just stretched out across the road, foraging slowly, and in stark contrast to the mulga snake that, probably never seen a human before either. Its reaction compared to this taipan. This taipan was just so relaxed, so chilled, and this is another snake that I like. I didn't let her run through my hands, but it's another snake that I had a moment with where I was sort of picking her up and just, handling the back end of the snake, and she was just such a chiller. So again, I've been able to get a shot I was pretty happy with that sort of shows that desert habitat that it inhabits.
Yeah, and she looks very she looks very laid back, very placid.
Yeah, I mean, I've got some footage. I think it's probably on my Facebook page of this snake. Those who are really interested to find it might have to troll through a lot of videos, but I've got footage of this snake just cruising through the spinifex, and I'm like getting right up close, iPhone, within 20, 30 centimeters of her. And she's just curious, not defensive at all. And it's just a really good example of how a highly venomous snake, like this snake is super venomous, but it's not dangerous. Like it's only dangerous if you step on it or you were to harass it so much that you provoked a bite out of it. And, it's what sort of kills me when I have these interactions with these snakes is you're just like, man, if people could see the interaction I'm having with it, they might sort of change their perception a bit of their perceived danger around venomous snakes, you know?
Yeah, and they really are individuals too, like you said before. You know, I mean, just from owning snakes, you know, I can have 3 of the same species and they all behave differently. You know, it's wild. Yeah,
the people forget that they have individual temperaments, just like a cat or a dog or any other domestic animal they're used to seeing, you know?
Yeah, without a doubt. Absolutely. I mean, I own snakes that want nothing to do with me, and I own other ones that I come in the room and they want to come out of the cage and, you know, hang out with me.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's bizarre.
That's my favorite. As a wildlife photographer interacting with these animals, if they are curious about me and you have that mutual curiosity, that's the best moment. Like you can't beat that.
Yeah, it makes you want. I mean, hey, you know, we're animals too, you know, and you know, there's humans that are inclined to interact with snakes. Maybe there's snakes that are inclined to interact with humans.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's, you know, it's not actually that far fetched to imagine that an animal sees you and goes, "Oh, what are you? Like, let me smell you. Let me get close to you." You know, it's not that, you know, far-fetched, is it?
No, I don't think it is. All right, so what do we got here?
This is the iconic thorny devil. So again, this is another shot that I chose to include for you know, the audience that might want to see one of Australia's like most iconic lizards, and man, they just don't get more individual and unique and fascinating than the thorny devil. Like if anyone can zoom in or whatever on these images, you'll see like they have a fake head on their neck, so that when they encounter a predator, they can bury their own head like low. They've got 2 horns, which obviously gives them the name devil, and they just sort of go like this. They crouch down and sort of bury their head, and they present this like false head on the back of their neck, and it's just bulbous tissue that, you know, if anything was to peck it or have a go at it, you know, it's protecting its head by the 2 horns and keeping low, and then it's presenting this head on the back of its neck. So that's just one of its really unique features. It's covered in these thorns that, you know, you can pick up and hold these animals, and they're, you know, a bit spiky, a bit like, you know, holding a pineapple or something like that. They're not going to pierce your skin unless you're really to push on one of them. But you can imagine a snake trying to eat something like this would be really uncomfortable and almost impossible. So I doubt they get eaten by snakes very often. And the other really cool adaptation they've got is they can stand in water, or if any water from the dew, like, you know how you get those really dewy mornings, you can imagine the desert, there's no freestanding water usually laying around. So if it rains, or if they do find any moisture, they can stand in it, and capillaries in the skin will like suck the water, basically effectively suck the water up and direct it to its mouth, and it can drink by literally standing in water or having dew touch its skin. So it's fascinating.
Yeah, what a well adapted animal to the to its environment. That's incredible.
Yeah, they sort of remind me of like your horned lizards and stuff like that.
Yeah. And so what like, talk to me a little bit about this this trip and what brought you out there, and how long you were out there for this one.
Well, this is in the Tanami Desert, and this trip takes the cake for being in the hottest environment I've ever been in. I went out there for 4 days. My stretch through the Tanami Desert. This is in the Northern Territory, which is a state that's smack bam in the middle of Australia, and it gets the coldest and it gets the hottest depending on the season. And I went obviously in summer where I could. This was like late March actually, so it was just before summer, and they were coming off the back of a massive drought, and it was just roasting. The temperature on my car was reading about 54 degrees during the day. And
dude, that's 129 degrees Fahrenheit.
It was ridiculous, man. Like there's no shade out there. There's just small scattered shrubs that you can't really get a car, close enough to get any reliable shade. So I had to, during the heat of the day, there were periods where I just had to get in my aircon and sit there with my car running. I popped my hood for the engine heat to escape, and I just sat in the car with the aircon running for an hour so I could just get a bit of sleep. But
Jeez.
It was just really harsh environment. I tried to do some road cruising after dark, but the corrugations in the road was so bad that I was just shaking my car to pieces because they had a mine out there, like in the middle of nowhere. It's not uncommon to have mines in these places. And they had big semi-trailers with fuel tankers, with 2 and 3 trailers going along these roads, and just they hit one bump and then it becomes just a series of bumps, and that's how these corrugations form. So they just make it really bad for you to actually lap up and down the road.
Wow. So
it's just another one of those really harsh places to work. I couldn't really find a lot. And it wasn't until I left, I got this fella on the way out. So I was really, really stoked to see a thorny devil in that quintessential desert habitat. And as you can see in the background, like there's a big termite mound in the background, and that's what, for anyone that's unaware about termite mounds, they just create them out of clay and they're rock hard. Like, if you were to hit this with a car, your car would almost come off second best. So really cool.
Man, that is wild. I can't even imagine. I mean, if it was like 120 to 130 degrees temperature, like that, the sand must have been like 180 to almost 200 degrees Fahrenheit. Like it must have been just scorching hot out there.
Yeah. And I'm lucky I found this thorny devil out early morning basking, and I got a shot before it heated up too much. So this is probably around 8 o'clock in the morning, but it's already, warm enough for you to probably sweat. But yeah, got it on the way out, and it was rough, man. I had a sandstorm the night before where I was asleep in like one of these pop-up mosquito net type things. It was like, imagine a pop-up tent, but it's just a mosquito net. So I'm thinking, this will be fine. I can jump in here. The mosquito net, keeps me safe from scorpions and anything else that might be crawling around the desert at night. And then, around midnight, I'm getting sand blasted, and all the sand is coming through the fine mesh while I'm trying to sleep. And then I, wake up to this storm approaching, and had to like pack everything up quickly and jump in my car. And it just bucketed down rain for a bit, but mostly it was just like a storm that lasted about 45 minutes or an hour. So I just had to sleep in my car, upright in the front seat pretty much. Yeah.
Jeez, man. And this was a solo trip?
Yeah, this is a solo trip, and it was a 6-week trip as well. And it was just a hard trip. Like the location I went before this was in the West McDonnell Ranges, and I went there hoping to find desert death adders and Centralian carpet pythons. And I get there, and the whole area mind you, I've traveled thousands of kilometers to get there. And I get there, and the whole area had been burnt out by bushfires. So, nothing was active except for a couple of, children's pythons I found in the gorges. But I searched high and low, most nights or every night for about 7 nights trying to find the Centralian carpet python. When I get bored of walking the gorges at night looking for them, I'd go out road cruising, and, I think I got a gecko, a couple of gecko species, no snakes, because all the habitat was burnt out. Everything that was left there was probably in hiding or had, moved to a different area or whatever, but it was a bit heartbreaking to go there. And then, I've done all my species research. I've planned the trip for months, and then you drive there and the whole habitat's wiped out by a bushfire, and you're like, man, how's my life? So then I went to the Tanami Desert, and the heat was crazy. The roads were almost unlappable. And I kept getting roadkill because of the trucks going up and down the road. Yeah. I was after Woma pythons, and I think I got about 4 crispy Woma pythons because the trucks had hit them the night before, and then the daytime would just suck all the moisture out of them, and you were just left with these crispy pythons on the side of the road.
Jeez, man.
So it was rough, man.
Yeah, dude, that sounds crazy. I mean, so how are you eating? How are you eating? Like, are you just doing like a lot of camping food? I mean, how does stuff not just spoil and get destroyed in the temperatures?
Well, I've been there and done that, and I used to eat pretty rough on the, initial herp trips. And when you're younger, you're sort of willing to put up with a bit more rough and tumble. But the older I've got, the softer I've got, and I've now got like 130 litre stand-up fridge with a little freezer. It's like something you'd have in a caravan or an RV for you guys,
Yeah.
Pretty good. I just stock it full of food and try and do a lot of meal prep before I go. So you're making up big curries or spaghettis or whatever, and having days of those that you can just heat up. And this day and age of, you can get some pretty cool stuff. And I've got like a little pie warmer oven that runs in the back of my car, and I can literally cook a roast in it, which I have done over like 2 hours. I've just put the roast in, and 2 hours later I've got like, a small roast to eat. So it's, I do things a bit fancier and a bit better these days now that I'm a bit older and got a bit of cash around. Yeah,
man, you got to figure it out now. I mean, geez, when I went out this last time, I think we traveled like 750 miles in 2 days. And I think all we ate was like dehydrated fruit and, regular fruit. Like that's all we could like grab that would, stay in a truck, and yeah, it was kind of miserable.
Yeah, it's not fun, man. And, there's enough hardship out there than, having to eat poor food. So I tend to eat pretty well now on my herp trips. And I find if you're in really hot climates, you crave moist food. So you're eating dehydrated stuff that you've got to add water to. That's fine in winter when it's cold and cool and, you can cozy up around the fire or something. But if you're in these hot climates, you want moist food. So I like to take a lot of, 2 fruits and canned beetroot and stuff that you can have that actually has some moisture content to it, because your mouth just doesn't want dry fruit,
Yeah. Oh, man. Yeah, this is a beautiful one. All right, so what are we looking at here?
This is the Colette snake, Pseudechis colletti, and it's probably the most stunning black snake, and it would be in the top 5, stunning snakes we have in Australia. But not only that, they're quite elusive and hard to find in the wild, mostly because the area that they're found in is like the Mitchell Grass Downs region of inland Queensland. And as you can see, it's like cracking black soil. So these snakes live actually down the soil cracks, similar to inland taipans, and they'll live underground in these soil cracks. And then they'll emerge, at nighttime, usually at nighttime while it's hot out there. So it sort of forces them into nocturnal activity. And so you're out there looking for these snakes at nighttime. They can easily disappear down soil cracks. They're only coming out on the surface to actively forage and hunt. And they're one of those. It's one of those areas that's boom or bust. If it's copping no rain and it's in drought, these snakes, like, everything goes into hiding, whatever's still surviving from the drought. And then, when it rains, you'll get floods out there. So it's these areas that are really up and down. And there's plenty of herpers that have tried for these snakes like 20 times and not got one. But lucky enough, we timed it right. We went after big rains, and we went out, and I actually got one on my first attempt. Well, I say we because I was with 3 other guys, but we got one on most of our first attempt, which was like extremely lucky. And then this photo was the result. So,
wow.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Trying to capture the substrate with the cracking black soil, the snake in all its detail. I probably would have liked to have been a bit closer and got maybe more of the detail, but to sort of nail the habitat shot, I sort of had to do a bit of a long exposure and get some of that light that's still in the sky just after dark.
Wow. And how was this animal, like, disposition wise?
Pretty much what you'd expect from most black snakes. Defensive, but not overly defensive. It did calm down, and where I got really lucky here was when we were photographing it, it was right on that transition between, day and night. So it was at dusk, and there just seemed to be this window of opportunity where the snake did not move for about 5 minutes straight.
Oh, wow.
So then I wasn't getting any of the light in the background. I was just getting the snake on the substrate. And then the snake, it was just like it's maybe the only thing I can think of is its eyes were adjusting or whatever, but it just froze for about 5 minutes straight. And I was just able to sort of lengthen that exposure time and then get the light that was still the visible from last light, so that it all came together for that shot. But had it not have frozen for that period of time, I would not have had this result. So it was luck. Yeah,
man, absolutely gorgeous animal, beautiful terrain. That's cool. I didn't realize that they go down into the soil cracks too. That's interesting.
Yeah, well, there's probably enough, logs and different hides for these snakes, but because these black soil plains are fairly barren, and this was sort of around not too far from a township, so there was a tree here and there, but in most of their range, there's nothing but like black soil and grass for miles. So they pretty much have to live underground like a lot of the species out there.
Wild. All right, let's see what we got up next. All right, what do we got here?
Yeah, good that you showed this one as well, because it was from the same trip, and this was our second highest target species, the speckled brown snake. And they come in 3 distinct color morphs, and this is like what you would describe as like the salmon sort of orange color morph. And it's funny, they mostly come in like a cream tanned color, and that's, generally speaking, if you had 10 snakes, probably 8 of them are going to be this pale cream color morph, and they're not amazingly, stunning to look at. They're just, quite plain with a few dark flecks on them, and that's where they get the name speckled brown snake. But then these salmon individuals are quite nice. And then probably the holy grail out of the color morphs is like a pale off-white, almost like a bone color. And then they've got these dark saddle blotches on their dorsal. And they're just a really stunning snake. So maybe out of, 1 in 50 where we were working would probably have that color morph. And we were lucky to find all 3. But
wow.
I learned a really hard lesson when I was trying to catch the saddle banded one. Like we weren't expecting it. We saw it. We pulled over as quick as I could, but I lost it in long grass, and it went straight down a soil crack. So the one crack I had at that really nice color morph, I missed, and then I ended up catching, one of these and photographing the next best color morph. And you can see in the background, The area was just in flood not too long ago, and they were floodwaters that were over that fence. So that fence is probably, if you were to stand next to it, 1.2 meters high. So the floodwaters were over this fence, and you can see all the debris caught on the fence. So that was a really cool feature that I wanted to add into this shot. And then, managed to nail the sun behind it as well. And the posture of this snake and the demeanor of this snake, you'd probably think, it was quite feisty, but this was literally in, a half an hour shoot. This was literally the only time it showed any defensive posturing. It's just because my mate stood up beside me, and it, got a bit of a startle and reared up into a defensive posture. But other than that, it was curious, it was calm, it was just cruising around, and not at all what you would expect from a brown snake. But speckled browns, out of all the species of brown snake, they're probably one of the more chilled.
Wow. That is wild that it was flooded like that there. And where did you say this was in Australia?
This is like Mitchell Grass Downs bioregion of inland sort of Western Central Australia. Okay. So if people look up, if they're really curious, if people look up a town called Winton, it's not far from Winton, but.
Okay. That is crazy that it floods like that there.
Yeah. It is crazy because it's either in drought or it's flooding, or, and then the wildlife has to adjust and, survive all of this. So it's either droughts or floods, and typical Australia, basically.
It reminds me very much of where I am, Florida. We're either, droughts or we're getting drowned in rain. It's one or the other.
Yeah, and it seems to be, we've only got short memories as humans, but it seems to be getting more extreme, the floods and the fires and the cyclones and all that. Makes you think about climate change a bit.
Oh yeah, we get the hurricanes here, and I'm hoping that we have a quiet year this year. We're just going into our storm season, so it's it's not something I'm too I look forward to every year. I like the summer, and you go on your summer vacations and everything, but the reality is, unfortunately, you go on a vacation and a hurricane could come through. While you're away. So it's it kind of really can ruin your summer plans.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, we get the cyclones in the north, and especially over in Queensland, it's pretty cyclone prone. Every year you get cyclones in Australia, so it's just a matter of how many and how bad.
Yeah, and there was just really bad flooding recently, and was that Queensland or?
Yeah, we had some bad flooding. What are we now? We had some bad flooding last cyclone season up in the Kimberley, some really destructive flooding. Communities cut off, rivers, immense amounts of water just dumped on that area because it already has a big wet season. So when you get severe cyclones, they can create havoc up there. But North Queensland, Darwin in the Northern Territory and the Kimberley region, all across the top, they cop cyclones every year. It's just a matter of how bad they are. And, every 5 or so years, you'll get some bad ones that make the history books.
Yeah, it makes sense. I have diamond pythons, and I'm keeping them outside, and, we're about the same distance from the equator as New South Wales, Queensland area. So it's the environment is pretty much very similar. It's very, very similar. So I'm hoping that I'll be able to keep them successfully out there.
Hope so, man. It's always tricky trying to manage outdoor enclosures. I learned that with my first pet snake. I had a coastal carpet python.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and it's just always tricky. You can keep them outside in some places, but you move around and, trying to balance it all and make sure the animal's welfare is taken care of is pretty tricky. But don't tend to keep anything these days. So like when I was younger, I had a few, but I tend to sort of like to interact with the wild stuff now more than sort of have captive stuff. But
yeah. Well, it'd be hard for you, right? Because I mean, you're traveling so much for your
that's
job.
the biggest roadblock is if you collect snakes and you have a big collection, that they hamstring you if you want to travel a lot. So I found that the two, you either be a keeper and you have your hobby at home with you and really accessible, or you be a herper and you sort of go the other way. And I just love travel and adventure too much, so I'd sort of steered away from collecting just for that reason, really.
Yeah. It's you definitely have to keep your trips a lot shorter, that's for sure. All right, so what do we have here? Beautiful image. I mean, man, the way the background is illuminated and the sun coming through the trees.
Yeah,
Incredible.
this was like my first experience. My second experience with a coastal taipan. So this is the third piece of the puzzle in the taipan trilogy in Australia, and this was in North Queensland, and probably a 1.7 meter, 1.8 meter coastal taipan, and me and my friend were going up to visit a guy up there. I'll sort of keep his name anonymous, but he's like the taipan guy. He's just that obsessed with taipans that he doesn't even bother really going on many herp trips anymore. He just likes to live in North Queensland and go out and herp for taipans, and he has the most amount of experience out of anyone in Australia with coastal taipans. And this guy puts everyone to shame when it comes to what he will do with taipans, and that'll become evident when I tell this story. But I'm going up there to visit this guy and go out and look for a coastal taipan with him, because no one will be able to put you onto one better than this guy. And it's not even we're going up to his house, and it's like late afternoon, and we're driving through these cane fields, and me and my mate just spot this taipan on the road. It's out sort of basking, and we slam the brakes on, race out of the car, and it's just slowly cruising back into the long grass. So I was able to grab it by the tail before it disappeared into the cane fields. And it then felt something pulling on its tail. But this snake's, that big and that strong that it just goes, instead of turn around and do anything about this, I'm just going to try and pull myself into the vegetation further. So it's got its head wrapped around some, stalks of cane field, trying to pull its way into the vegetation. I've got it by the tail, and I'm yelling out for my mate, get the bag, He's run back, he's grabbed his bag. It wasn't the right bag. I'm like, get the other bag. Run back, he's grabbed this bag, and then just he sort of handed it to me. I'm like, film this, because it's not every day you get to film yourself catching coastal taipan, and these guys are like the big bad snake in Australia. They grow to 3 meters long. They have 12 millimeter fangs at that size. They're the most dangerous snake that you can handle in Australia at that size. And I just heard so many stories that they're so notorious, and I was part shitting myself, part just so excited, I'm so excited I've got this taipan by the tail. But I've got all these stories running through my head of people getting nailed by them and just how notorious they are. So anyway, my mate's handed me the bag. At that moment, the snake has decided it wasn't getting anywhere forward. So it's come back, it's flown back at me, and this snake's jumping all around the place. I've got it by the tail, and I managed to get it in the bag, twist it up, drop it on the ground, and my heart is just beating through my chest. And me and my mate are just like, what just happened? We thought we had to go and hook up with the taipan master, and he was going to get us to go out find this snake with him, and that's how we were going to do it, and it just sort of turned out that we got one out of pure luck before we even got to his house. So what happened from there was we took it straight to his house to show him because he only lived up the road, and he's just like, oh wow, he got one already, and like, you don't even need me. And we had a good catch up overnight. I said, should we go out and photograph this snake now? And he's like, look, I'd probably leave it till the morning. It's going to calm down. It's going to cool down. You probably don't want to photograph a hot one of these on your first try. So we listened to him. We kept it overnight. We went out and photographed it in the morning. And this snake just blew me away in every way, man. Like, we got it out of the bag. It was a little bit defensive to start with, but so we just sort of got some close-up headshots of it and had it like coiled up. And then it just started to just cruise around and just chill out very quickly. It was like, I'm a big venomous snake. You guys don't mean me any harm. And we started positioning it for a wide angle shot, and the snake's a little bit tense, and Shane's actually, I've just gone away and blurted out his name, but
it's just his first name.
Yeah, it's just his first name. Anyway, he is that comfortable with his snakes that he's just manipulating the snake with his bare hands, like reaching into the frame. I'm like, oh, can you lift the head? And he just put a finger underneath its head and just lift the head up for me like this. And my mind is blown. Like,
crazy.
I can't fathom this snake and how it's behaving compared to the reputation that coastal taipans have. And then you've got this guy who's like the snake master when it comes to taipans, and he's just moving the body with his bare hand, lifting its, and I'm like, he's going to get nailed any second now. But no, the taipan just sits there, lifts its head like you can see in this photo, allows me to capture it, and then starts to slowly cruise off. And then I've put the camera down because I've like quickly checked my shot. I've got the shot. I'm over the moon. I've got the perfect habitat, like this tropical woodland habitat in the background. The sun isn't even, when we first started photographing the snake, it was all shaded, this area. But, after half an hour, the sun's popped up just enough that it's just lit up all of that tropical woodland behind us. So you're getting all that, golden hour sort of first light hitting all of the vegetation. And then I've got this taipan that's completely chilled out. And we filmed it. We got video footage of it, and then Shane's just picked it up, draped it around his neck, and then just like held its head up for a photo with his hand under its head. I'm just blown away at what I'm seeing. So, we all get photographs with this snake. Me and my other mate pick it up. There's two of us on this snake. I'm on the head end. I'm just holding its neck like this. Its head's like a foot from us. We pick it up for a photo with it. We put it down. We let it go. And all of us were just like mind blown. Can't believe that the most notorious snake in Australia calmed down within a few minutes and then allowed us to just do whatever we wanted with it for a photograph. And it was just one of the most special moments, man. I've rarely had moments like that ever.
That is insane.
Yeah, it was such a cool experience. So whenever I look at this image, I'm like, man, I've got some of the best stories to go with, or best experiences, I should say, to go with them,
Yeah. Jeez. Man, I can't even fathom that. I mean, you said it was almost 2 meters long, that one?
Almost 2 meters long. And I guess what the cool thing is about these snakes is when they get to that size, and this is an adult one, but it's not, if this snake gets to live a long life, it could get 2.5, 3 meters long. So, and by then their head is like almost the size of your palm. And yeah, they're just, yeah, it's just such a
Wow.
crazy experience to have with a snake that's caused so many fatalities. There's a really cool book called Venom that a guy called Brendan James Murray published on taipans. It's a great read. Definitely give it a read if you want to hear the story about this coastal taipan and how notorious they were and how feared they were in North Queensland. And to have this experience after reading that book with the taipan, it just goes against everything you picture them to be like.
Wow. Damn, man. Yeah, that is absolutely wild. That is truly crazy. And I want to check out that book. That sounds like an interesting book.
Yeah, it's a cool read. I definitely recommend it.
Wow. That's crazy. All right. And what do we got here?
This is obviously another really iconic Australian species called the tiger snake. This used to be attributed to the most deaths in Australia because of just how prolific they were through early settlement times and where Australians chose to settle, down in Victoria and New South Wales. This snake caused the most amount of deaths until antivenom was developed. And then, after antivenom, the eastern brown snake sort of took over that sort of role, I guess, because how much they proliferated after human settlement, whereas tiger snake numbers went down, eastern brown snakes went up, and they sort of took over. But the tiger snake is just, it features in a lot of my shots, but the reason why I chose this one is because I live in Western Australia now, and there's an island called Karnak Island just off the coast, and the tiger snake population over there are just wild and untouched. They don't have any natural predators, which is really interesting because when you encounter tiger snakes over on the mainland, some of them can be quite defensive in nature, and they've got a bit of a bad rep, which is, I think, pretty undeserved. But everyone thinks tiger snake, and the first thing they think is aggressive. And it's really not the case, but it's so much not the case over on Karnak Island, where they've got no natural predators. So they're so used to harassment from the local seagull population. And if you look in the background of this shot, you'll see seagull nests.
Yeah.
And then I've also managed to capture a couple of seagulls up in the sky overhead, because for part of the year they go into nesting season. And this is what the tiger snakes are waiting for, where they cruise around the nests and eat the young seagull chicks. So the tiger snakes over there are used to like the seagull swooping them and pecking them. And, a portion of the tiger snakes have no eyes. They're blind because they've just been pecked out.
Jeez.
And they're so used to harassment over there that their temperament has really changed compared to mainland populations. So they're really placid. And again, I've been over there and I've literally picked up a tiger snake after photographing it because it was so chilled. When I caught it, I obviously had a glove on, but it didn't even try to bite the glove. It just wasn't interested in biting at all. So I've photographed this snake, as you can see here, and then basically just picked it up and free-handled it again, just for my own experience with the snake, and just to have that moment of connection with it where, it's not aggressive and doesn't want to bite you. So it's just a really cool, I love this photo because it tells the story of a really cool snake, and what the habitat it's in and the ecology it's got over there on the island. So, yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that's incredible. What a shot. All right. What do we got here?
Well, the big parenti, another iconic lizard. I chose to sort of mix it up and not talk about snakes too much. But this is Australia's largest lizard, and I think it ranks about number 3. I think Komodo dragons and then Asian water monitors, I think, grow a bit bigger. And then you've got these guys that I think are around number 3. And they're the biggest in Australia, 2 meter long lizard. And this was pretty much as big as they get. And I was up on a surf trip with some friends, and we're coming back from a surf break, and my mate hits the brakes, and he's like, "There's a giant lizard on the road," and I'm like in the back seat, like, "What is it?" So I race out and race over to it, and it's this big parenti, and it's eating another roadkill, smaller parenti at the time. And this lizard sort of turns around, charges at me to sort of get me on the back foot, because I did excitedly get a bit close to it. And then it bolts off up to some coastal cliffs, which is not far from the actual track that we were driving. And it goes up onto these cliffs, and I race off after it, following it. Again, I get too close, and it's whipped me with the tail and actually like opened up, like broken the skin on my shin. And I'm like, okay, settle down, like give it some space. But I'm just it was so keen to see my first one after moving to WA and up close like this. And then it's just plonked itself up on, obviously it had a meal in its belly. So its next move was to try and get as much sun and heat as possible to digest that meal. So it's just plonked itself down on this top of this coastal cliff. And you can see the background overlooking the WA coast like that. And I just said to my friends when they caught up to me, I'm just sitting there watching this parenti just bask in the sun like 2 meters away from it. And I'm like, you have to go get my camera for me. So they raced back to the car, raced back to the campsite, grabbed my camera, brought it back to me, and I was able to get a really cool shot of it like this, just with the WA coast in the background. But pretty unheard of like experience for my first, interaction with the biggest lizard in Australia.
That's incredible. And if you're just listening to this, I mean, the image is so incredible. It looks fake, like the background is just like that perfect, it's really crazy. Yep.
This is before AI was invented. So you can guarantee that everything in this shot is genuine.
That damn AI.
Well, I'm probably unplugged from what it's actually doing to wildlife photography, because I don't use it in, but I have heard of like some people just like imposing a sunrise or something like that into the sky, like literally replacing the whole, in this shot you've got the blue background, and I'll just highlight that and just say put in a sunset or something, and I'm like, oh man, it's so unauthentic. And if you're going to manipulate images that much, I guess if you say to people what you've done, then fine. But I think it really takes away from like true photography of being able to capture these elements in real time.
Yeah, it's a different thing. I mean, you can make stuff that looks pretty, but it's not actually capturing the reality, and the effort it takes to get a capture like this, which is just incredible. Okay, so what are we looking at here?
This is back to Sri Lanka, and this is probably one of the luckiest things I've ever seen. This is a mating pair of knuckles pygmy lizards, and they're critically endangered. They only live up on the peaks of some of the mountains in the Knuckles Ranges in the center of Sri Lanka. And this is one of my, biggest ticks for going over there just recently for that 11-day sort of period. And Knuckles pygmy lizard, they're critically endangered, pretty rare. You're only going to find one of these if you have a guide. Wow. So we've gone to his local spot. We were lucky enough to see that female in the morning. Like, this is like not even long after sunrise, and they're up on the top of these ranges, like just trying to catch any sun they can. So they're already active really early. And we caught the female, got a few shots of her, did a lap of the habitat, and then came back. And unfortunately, it was only this one tree that we could find them in. And I was filming the female again, just getting a bit of video footage of her. And the male just appears from around the trunk, comes around the trunk, mounts on top of her and starts mating with her, all while I'm filming and taking photos. And I'm like,
wow,
man, how surreal can this get? Like, I was not expecting this. So my jaw was hitting the ground while I was trying to photograph and film this happening. So I got a great series of shots, and because I'm using a long lens, like a 600 millimeter lens, I've got some shaky footage of it, which I'm, maybe trying to figure out how I can use some image stabilizing software and maybe sort of stop it from moving so much, because you've got your telephoto lens out and that you're trying to hold it as still as you can, but it's still like moving around slightly.
Yeah.
So yeah, if I can fix that footage up, I've got some really cool footage of this actually happening. So super lucky.
Yeah, that's incredible. So the male is like really gorgeous, black and yellow, looks like banding down the tail, and the female is sort of just looks like mossy bark, like kind of the polar opposite, just built to blend in.
Yeah, it's she was amazing. She was just like, and apparently they can change their color. It's like similar to chameleons. So she's blending in perfectly with the bark. But I don't know whether he's changed to black, whether he's in like bright mating colors, or whether black is just a better color to thermoregulate and pick up some of that sun. But who knows? But they're certainly a beautiful pair, and I love that they're contrasting colors, because it makes it a lot better, to sort of make out what's happening here and who's who.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, man. Well, that is all of the slides we have, and that was some great stories. God, you must have so many stories. I mean, just your gallery alone is so impressive. I've got everything listed in the description of this video. If you're on YouTube, Spotify, whatever, wherever you're at, in the description, you can find Ross's website, Facebook, Instagram, obviously. And yeah, I mean, geez, I hope people go and get some prints from you. And so if you were to buy a print from you, does that come from is that coming from directly from you, or is that coming from like a company that just prints it out and ships it?
A bit of both. In Australia, I have a company that prints and ships. They're a really well-renowned one, and they do museum quality prints. But obviously, it's all made Australian made, so it's highest quality, and that's all Australian localized stuff. But I just find it's not worth shipping these prints overseas, because there's too much risk of damage, especially because they are like museum quality. The company just advises not to ship overseas. So what I've come up with is digital download print files for people that are overseas. And I think, is it your partner, Adam? She might have bought one already. Is that correct? Do you have a partner?
No. Was it? Well, yes, I have a wife. But unless she did it for Father's Day, and you're ruining a surprise right now.
I don't know, man. I'm just going to stop speaking there. But yes, a female who claims to have a partner called Adam. I'm not sure if it's your partner or whatever, but she was saying that she's bought the digital download file of a print already. So I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. I haven't even been on the podcast yet, and you're already getting my work out there for me. So
hell yeah.
But jumping back to the way it works for overseas customers is you just jump on, buy the digital download off my website, and then you have the print file, which you can then take to your local printer and get printed in whatever size, canvas, frame print, anything like that. So that's sort of the way I do it for overseas customers. It's just a lot easier.
Hell yeah. Yeah, that's awesome, man.
Yeah.
Well, that's cool. And yeah, I hope that, gosh, this was I learned so much from this episode. So I really appreciate your time. Learned a lot about all the different Australian species, and I appreciate it. And you know what? You kind of shed a different light on handling venomous snakes. It's something that is very polarized because we do have a lot of dipshits here in America that are doing it just for likes,
Yeah.
or attention.
Yeah.
And not to mention, they're just filthy, nasty human beings on top of it that are doing this, that are abusive to animals. They're just a burden on the hobby and society and conservation and all that, whereas the stories that you told were more like I know at one point you said the context is missing when you just put it up, right? And it's pretty obvious the context when you just post up something like that is that you want attention.
Yeah.
Which I understand. We all want attention, to some degree or another. That's a human thing. But these people are doing it in a very dangerous, unnecessary way. And, but I think that a lot of the stories that you told where that was a facet of the story, there was a lot of context and a lot more to the story than just that,
Yeah. Well, here's what I've learned in terms of social media. Firstly, if you want to be someone who's, respected in your line of work, if you choose wildlife photography or wildlife conservation, and then you're out there showing people, how much of a badass snake handler you are, for Instagram likes and to sort of fit that model that Instagram want. They want easily digestible, quick, high impact sort of stuff, like people acting, dangerous behavior of animals and stuff that's going to capture people. And if you sort of mold your presentation to the world off the Instagram algorithm, what you're going to find is you're just going to get you might get lots of attention, but it's false fame. It's false. Doesn't matter how many Instagram likes or people that follow you, because they're all just like, oh, look at this dude. Oh, he's crazy. He's an idiot. Like, they don't care about you or the animal. It's all just false fame. It's not even worth chasing or trying to achieve. And then the negative side to that is that anyone in this industry, any scientists, anyone that's going to use your photography for, wildlife conservation, if you want to get your images in books, if you want Australian Geographic to publish your articles, if you want to make a name for yourself, you can do it on Instagram and be a fool and get lots of false fame, or you can do it the right way where you actually care about the animal and you put the animal first. You're not going to be as big and successful on social media. But then the first thing, like Australian Geographic, if they're going to publish your work, they're going to go straight to your Instagram. They're going to look at you being a clown, jumping around, tailing things. Look at me, got my shirt off, tailing this animal. Look how badass I am. They're going to take one look at that, and anyone else that wants to publish your work and just go, nah, he's not the right fit for us. And it even affects people's jobs over here. Like if you want to get a job in wildlife conservation, like fauna spotter catching over here is huge, where we're developing and growing so fast that we need a clear habitat, but we need to do it ethically. So you get mining companies and all kinds of companies hiring fauna spotter catcher companies where they go out there and they clear the area of wildlife. They look in trees that have been knocked down and they make sure that they can save and relocate animals. I got one of my mates owns one of the biggest companies here, and the first thing he does is when he's going to hire someone is look at their social media. And if they're one of these tools behaving like we've sort of discuss, then you're not getting a job, you're not getting your work published. You're just doing yourself a disservice, all for a bit of false fame on social media. It's just not worth it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's such an interesting way to look at it as false fame. Cause it's, and you said, people are just sitting there like, oh, look at this idiot, and they don't care about you. Honestly, they don't care about you. They'd probably be happy to see you die, or see your name come up in the news, and
you get bitten. They want to see something interesting happen. They want to show their friends something crazy. You know what I mean? And it's just empty, man. It's just not. It's not what you should be striving for. And I think if you're someone that's maybe getting sucked into that, maybe just have a bit of a think about what you're doing and how you're negatively affecting the animals, how you're negatively affecting your own image, and maybe try and do something worthwhile instead of cheap and empty, like get famous on Instagram.
Yeah. Yeah. And what's the longevity of that too? Getting famous on Instagram, and just thinking, how long will that last you? How long will that fame last? And then how long is your lifespan going to be if you're doing incredibly risky things just for likes, on the regular?
100%, man. Like, I've turned down TV shows and all kinds of things because what they're looking for is an idiot they can film on camera and show them in all these dangerous scenarios. And people can see through it. Like, all of my colleagues in this game or in this scene over here, if you're one of these, like, I will refuse to even follow anyone that behaves like that. If their videos are coming up doing that Instagram crap, I won't even follow them or let them friend me or anything. I'm just like, you're an idiot. Like, and pretty much what everyone else is doing that's got any kind of care for wildlife or wants to conserve wildlife. So just steer away from it.
Yeah. All right, Ross. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. You're doing awesome stuff. Thank you for caring about animals and educating people and putting out awesome photography. And thanks for coming on the show, man. I appreciate it.
You're a legend, Adam. Thanks for your time, mate. Appreciate it.